Hello and welcome to our yoga practice today. Take your time to get settled in a position that feels comfortable for our bodies. For some of us, that might mean laying on our backs, or maybe we're seated in a chair. Once we feel comfortable in our position, we can adjust our arms accordingly. Maybe the hands feel nice on the belly so we can feel the rise and the fall with our breath. Maybe we want to have one hand on the belly and one hand on the heart. Or maybe it feels just more easy to have the hands placed by the side of our body with the palms facing up towards the sky. Whatever version feels appropriate for us today, that is a choice that we get to make, with no judgment and no expectation of how our body needs to be in this moment. Taking a few deep breaths here, feeling the low belly expand on the inhale and soften on our exhale. Inhaling to expand and exhaling to soften. Taking this opportunity to feel heavy in our body. So taking some inquiry right now in this moment, where do we feel heavy? Maybe our shoulders feel heavy. Maybe our hips or ankles or our elbows or even our fingers. Allow that heaviness to be. Reminding ourselves that heaviness is a state of grounding. It's a state of stability. It's a state of strength. So as we settle into our mat, let's allow that heaviness to just arrive. And then when we're ready, we're going to bend those knees. We're going to allow the knees to come in towards the chest, grabbing behind the thighs just to protect those knee joints. And inviting any small movement we would like to have here. Maybe it's a little rocking side to side, giving a little massage to that low back and the sacrum. Maybe it's bringing the knees in and out, just starting to warm up those hips. Seeing what our hips have to say today. And reminding ourselves to have a nice long breath in and out here. Very easy as we're starting to warm up those joints. And it feels nice. We can allow those knees just to kind of walk. So placing one hand on the knee and just alternating those knees forwards and backwards. We can even invite some small movements in the circles of the knees going away and in towards one another. So as we have more movement in the low body, our spine is heavy, our head is connected, our shoulders are relaxed into our mat, and the ankle joints are just relaxed, finding that comfort, finding the movement that feels good in our bodies today. And then when we're ready, we can expand one leg out on our mats as we explore the movement, again in a heavy, strong way of moving that femur in the hip socket. No right or wrong. You can make the movements big or small. Just checking in with that hip socket. How is that feeling today? Maybe we even find a little extension with that leg, reaching our toes up towards the sky, rolling through that ankle as we start to bring awareness to that joint. We can bend and straighten the knee as we need for ourselves. And just as a reminder to bring our awareness back to our breath, that space of our foundation, that grounding, that presence. Feeling that femur nice and heavy again, strong and stable into the hip socket, as the opposite hip again is very, very heavy here, connected into our mat or maybe even into our chair. Maybe extending that leg out to the side, feeling more movement in the hip socket. Finding a nice deep inhale and a long exhale. Grounding through the opposite foot, feeling heavy into all four corners of that leg, pressing into our mats. And maybe having the knee bent feels better, or maybe extending the leg out as well. Again, there's no right or wrong here. We're making choices that allow us to feel safe within our bodies. And some days those movements are going to be bigger. Some days those movements are going to be smaller. The only thing that matters is that we are listening and honoring our body and feeling connected with our breath. And then when we're ready, we'll switch to the other side. Same exploration here, exploring how does the femur move in the hip socket on the opposite side of our bodies. We're always aiming for that symmetry, but that's just kind of not the truth. Our bodies are going to be asymmetrical, so we acknowledge and we pay attention to with inquiry, with curiosity. What does the side of the body feel like today? How is that different from the other side of the body? No judgment, no expectations of how it should look or feel. This is our opportunity to connect with our body in a safe range of motion for us today. Maybe our movement is a little bit smaller than normal. New things can emerge when we slow down and make things maybe a little bit less of an expression of the pose. Continuing with our breath here as we bring maybe the leg across the medial line. We find a little bit of movement through that ankle joint. Feeling that hamstring stretch, relaxing ourselves here. Continuing to shake it up, moving anything around that we need. And then when we're ready, we're going to be flexing and extending through the ankle joint here. So allowing the heel to be connected to our mat or the floor, however we're moving here, but allowing that movement from our foundation of our feet to reverberate up through the whole body, allowing the head to relax, feeling just that rocking, calming sensation in the body. And then we'll bring the hands together and just start to stir up the upper body as well. Feeling the scapula moving from our back, maybe giving a little massage in between those shoulder blades. Maybe the movement gets bigger, maybe it's really small, whatever it is that we need today. We're just allowing the limbs to move our center, our torso. So feeling movement through the rib cage as well as through the hips here. I'm taking this opportunity to check back in with the breath, noticing how everything is. And let's just shake that all out, letting go of any movement that we don't need. And then when we're ready, we're going to place the feet down on our mat, scooting those heels towards our fingertips, and we're going to peel the pelvis up off of the floor. So coming into an easy bridge flow here for ourselves today. Whatever that version is might be different than what it looks like for me today. It might be different than what it was yesterday. We just allow the pelvis to peel up off of our mat, one vertebra at a time, feeling ease in our neck, ease in our shoulders, pressing down into the feet nice and heavy through the heels and the big toe and the pinky toe. We can incorporate the arms as well here. So coordinating the arms to lift up past our head as we press the pelvis up towards the sky, reaching out with those fingertips, painting through the earth here. And then as we press the pelvis back down, the arms press down into the ground as well. If that feels good, we can continue with the arms, or if that is too much for our shoulder joint today, we can allow the hands just to press down into the mat, into the earth, into our chair, feeling that expansion through the front of the chest, and then the softening back down. And then when we're ready, rolling onto one side, taking our time to transition into all fours. So allowing ourselves to be curious here as we press ourselves back into that child's pose. Maybe we want to do a wide knee child's pose. So the toes are coming together as the knees spread out, allowing that chest just to fall down towards the mat. Or maybe it feels better to have the knees together, whichever version we're looking for today. No matter what, we're going to feel that pelvis nice and heavy. And then we can extend ourselves, reaching off of our mat, finding that lateral flexion through our spine. So the lower body does not move, it's the upper body that's shifting. Coming back through our center, allowing ourselves to be settled, and then extending the arms off of our mat in the opposite direction, feeling the expansion through that rib cage, through that breath, inhaling and exhaling. And returning ourselves right on back to the center, feeling grounded, feeling safe. And as a reminder, our child's pose is always there for us at any point, just taking that moment to relax. And then we'll shift forward all the way down into the belly, creating a little pillow with our hands and allowing the hips to shift. A little shimmy shake here. Again, letting the toes be heavy. Placing the hands underneath our shoulders as we come up into a small extension in that cobra. Just a little baby cobra. Feeling the hands grounding through the earth as we find a small expression through that upper body. We'll take that inhale to expand. And exhale to release. Lower body is heavy, so we find mobility through our spine, articulating up one vertebra at a time. Finding the placement of the arms. Now we can make choices here. We can have the arms placed down on the ground, or we can even allow the legs to float up just for a little bit more of a back activation. Settling, allowing that ear to connect, and then we reach out, expanding out, so grounded through that pelvis, very, very heavy here. So there's a strength through the front of the body as we have this lightness and this expansion through the back of the body. And making choices there of where the limbs want to be, pressing all the way back up into all fours and sitting back onto our heels if this feels comfortable for us. Taking a moment just to settle, shimmy shake anything out that we don't need anymore. And when we're ready, we'll shift back into all fours. Coming into our cat-cow flow here, dropping that belly and rounding on through, letting the head be heavy as we look back towards our belly button. And our joints are stacked. Wrists are underneath elbows. Elbows are underneath our shoulders. Knees are underneath the hips as the tops of the feet press down. Finding that exhale as we round on back, feeling the skin of our back reaching up towards that sunshine. And then on the inhale, we find the belly just drop on down. Taking our time here with our flow, moving through the spine and our range of motion that feels appropriate for us today. We can even allow the head to turn one side and the other as we allow the eyes to really gaze, turning ourselves, looking back towards one of our feet, finding a little lateral flexion here. Again, we're staying grounded though with our knees and the tops of our feet and those hands, but we're finding that mobility of the upper body as we shift side to side. And adjusting our wrists as we need to, continuing with that flow, looking past the shoulder towards the toes. And then when we're ready, we're going to find a little expression here, stretching out the bottoms of our feet. So we feel the toes pressing down into the earth as we imagine that the soles of our feet are just expanding out, spreading out, finding that stretch so we can feel more of that connection to the ground. Continuing to think about that idea of the root chakra and how it is our foundation. And starting to make fists, opening and closing of the fingers, rolling those wrists around as we need to, as fast or as slow is what feels appropriate for us today. And then shifting that weight forward into all fours and slowly bending and straightening those knees to stretch the hips up towards the sky as we come into our first downward facing dog. Adjusting our feet and our hands as we need, rolling through those ankles so we can start to get a little bit more awareness and proprioception through the bottoms of our legs. Taking a little walk of our dog here, and then when we're ready we can just find that moment to settle. All 10 fingers pressing down into our mat, pressing the feet together as we lift one leg up, shifting that weight and bringing that into our lunge. So taking this opportunity here to have that knee right over that ankle joint, relaxing the shoulders down and back. We're feeling the length through the front of the chest as we maintain that nice heavy quality through our feet grounded down. And then pressing the hips on back so we can stretch through the front of the leg. So as we're starting to warm up through those hips, we're moving in a range of motion that feels appropriate for our bodies today, shifting forwards and backwards, and maybe we can even couple that movement with our breath. So finding that inhale as we press the hips on forward, exhale as we reach and extend and stretch through that hamstring back. Moving at our own pace here, maybe a little twist through that spine feels nice. So moving in a way that just feels kind of good for our bodies. We can adjust here. Maybe we expand the arm upwards. We'll shift side to side. Maybe we rotate in both directions. Just continuing to lubricate the joints in our hips. Feeling that activation of our tailbone. So you can imagine maybe a bright red light at the bottom and the base of our spine. And then coming back into all fours and pressing back into child's pose. Tucking those toes, lift those hips on up. Coming back into that downward facing dog, feeling the hands nice and strong here. Lengthening through the backs of the knees. We can always maintain a little bend of the knees as we need to as we're reaching those heels down towards the floor. Finding an easy breath here, in and out. Bringing the feet together and then shifting our weight into one leg as we extend the leg up towards the sky, rolling that ankle, bring that knee on forward. We can always use our hand as well to bring that leg back to the front of our mat as we come into our low lunge, wrapping those shoulders down and back, finding the extension through the top of the head, all the way down through the tailbone. And we can begin to shift those hips back as well. Maybe we need a little bend of that front knee as we stretch that hamstring, continuing to warm up our bodies here. Finding that breath. Exhaling to round. Inhaling to shift forward. Exhaling to round. Inhaling, coming back forward. And as we're moving through our low lunge here, we're feeling the top of the back leg pressing down into the earth. Finding a little rotation through that spine, nice and strong through that hand. Pressing on back, getting a stretch through those hamstrings, reaching that arm up if that feels good in our shoulder today. Placing the hands, maybe a little rotation in the opposite direction. Coming back into that centered placement there. Reaching forwards and backwards again, as many times as we like, as fast as slow as we would like to go. And then we'll bring ourselves back into that child's pose, allowing those hips to be really heavy. So we're taking a moment here to just come into this inward shape, this grounded shape. Maybe we imagine that we are a rock. Just taking a moment of rest. And we'll press ourselves back up into that downward dog, pedaling the feet out, having any movement that we feel is appropriate for us today, bringing those feet back together. And we're going to crisscross our legs as we come to the top edge of our mat. Take our time here, just allowing those legs to cross over one another. Feeling grounded through the feet. We have big toe, pinky toe, inside the heel, outside the heel. Bending the knees as much as you like. Maybe even waking up the backs of the legs, the tops of the feet. So little pats and taps from the hands here. Bringing some awareness to the lower body as we continue our practice today. Maybe going up into the glutes, the quads, inner and outer thighs. Giving a nice little tap here. Maybe even into that lower back. And then when we're ready, swooping those arms up and out, reaching up towards the sky as the sun is shining down on us and we feel the breeze on our faces. And we're going to come into our mountain pose. And our mountain pose is one of the strongest poses that we have. Equal weight on both the right and the left. We can feel the earth pressing into the soles of the feet. And then we can start to shift our foundation a little bit here. Give a little challenge to ourselves. What happens when our foundation starts to change? So rocking side to side through the feet. Allowing the weight to shift forwards and backwards. What does that feel like in the body? How are things starting to change as our foundation changes? Maybe we challenge ourselves to go a little bit beyond our edge. What happens if we start to rotate and create circles? That lower body moving around, finding a little fluidity here, even though we remain very stable and strong. Swooping those arms up towards the sky and pressing down with those hands. So we're going to do a little activation here. I'm going to face the camera so you can see me better. An activation of reaching those arms up and then pressing the hands down. So there's a little bit of force here. Finding that energy through the palms of the hands as we press down into the earth. We can couple our breath here, inhaling up and maybe exhaling. Maybe we can actually hear our exhale. Inhale, pressing it down. Yes. Making sure that those knees are tracking right over those toes as we continue to build some heat in those quads and into the glutes. A little bounce here, maybe a little shoulder roll as well. So moving through that upper body as we're grounding through our lower body. Making the shoulder rolls as big or as small as we like. And then we'll change the direction, allowing the shoulders to come forwards. And continuing with that bounce so we can feel gravity. We can start to really feel the bones giving into gravity, and we feel that heaviness in the heels. Stepping out into a wide position here. Heels are facing one another as the toes are gently turning out from the hip socket. A little shift of that weight side to side to adjust ourselves. And then we're going to bend our knees as we squeeze those elbows into the side body. Sweeping those arms up and around. Squeezing in. Feeling the strength of our legs here. As you can see, the smile comes across my face because as I am doing my moonflowers here, I see an eagle fly above me. So maybe in our own practice, maybe we may not be outside, but what if in this moment we can imagine something soaring above us as we're practicing and bending those knees, strengthening that lower body, connecting the breath with our movements here. Inhaling up, exhaling to bend. Swooping the arms up towards the sky and squeezing on down. Inhaling up, exhale to bend. Feeling all four corners of the feet as we're allowing those knees to track over the toes. And then switching into our sunflowers here, swooping the arms up towards the sky and hinging forward with our torso. Allowing those arms to just reach out and back in. And maybe we imagine holding on to something that's the color red. Whatever that is for us. Maybe it's we're reaching for a bright red apple. Or maybe it's a red gem that we're holding. Just whatever that is, allowing ourselves to imagine holding this powerful red force in our hands. And then we're going to come into those knees bent and just stirring up the energy here, allowing those hips to circle around. Making sure that we're moving in a range of motion that's appropriate for our knees and our ankles here. Finding that placement of coming into that goddess squat, reaching up and bending down, placing the hands on our thighs as we start to rotate through that spine. So feeling the inhale to lengthen, exhale to twist. So finding the rotation of our spine here, again moving in a range that feels good for us today. Coupling that with our breathing. Just making sure that those knees are aligned over those ankles. Swooping the arms up and bending, we'll step to the front of our mat together. Taking a moment to feel that rotation in the shoulder joint, opening up, swooping the arms up above the head, and sitting back into our chair pose. Inhaling to lengthen, shoulders relax down and back. Exhale to sit. And maybe we can imagine that we're sitting in this big, elaborate, bright red chair. So think about all of the decorations that you would put on this imaginary chair. Inhaling up, exhaling, bending, squeezing those arms on in. Inhaling to lengthen, squeezing the elbows in. We can play around with the placement of the arms there as well, coming up to the opposite end of our mat, plie, and bending those knees into our chair. Inhaling up, exhaling, bend. Again, bringing back that image of the chair. What does the chair look like on this side? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. What does it feel like as you sit into that chair? And then same thing as we swoop back with our hips towards the long edge of our mat, finding a little flow here. One chair to bend, lengthening out, Exhaling to squeeze into our moonflowers, shifting those feet to the opposite edge of our mat as we bend back into our chair. No wrong way to do this. Just finding a little fun for yourself here, playing around with the expression of the upper body, just as long as we continue to wake up and warm up those muscles of the lower body, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads. And what if we imagine that we had red paint or paintbrushes in our hands and we start to paint this canvas around us? What kind of shapes and patterns would we create? Where on our body would we put that red paint? So encouraging a little creativity here for ourselves as we find our moment to stand at the top edge of our mat, feeling the feet nice and grounded, wrapping the shoulders down and back, shifting that weight forwards and side, taking this moment to recoup, connect back into the earth here, pressing the weight over the ball of the foot as we start to rotate in that hip socket. And then we make our choice here of our tree pose. So what does your tree look like today? It can be different than what your tree is on another day. And just like the trees behind me, the leaves are just blowing in the wind. So maybe we imagine that our tree is holding maybe red leaves, or maybe it's holding red birds or red shapes, whatever it is. What kind of branches does your tree have today? And can we challenge ourselves in our grounding of that standing leg, of finding rotation in the upper body? And it's okay if we wobble. That's a part of being a tree. We move with the wind, but we feel the roots of our feet pressing down into the earth, and then we'll release that leg when we're ready. Again, making any adjustments that we need for ourselves, and then when we're ready, we're going to shift our weight into the opposite leg, peeling the heel off the floor. Maybe we have that rotation, starting to play around with what that feels like in the hip socket here, and once again, making choices of what our tree pose is like here. Maybe we feel the leg that's bent pressing into our standing leg, and that standing leg presses back into that foot to create that dynamic tension. Finding the placement of our arms that feels appropriate for us. And here, once again, we use our imagination and bring in the senses of colors, or maybe what does our tree smell like on this side? What do the branches feel like? What is the texture of our tree trunk? What kind of movement does our tree want to share with us today? And then when we're ready, we'll release that and find any adjustments of our lower body as we need to. Maybe finding those circles again through the ankle joint. And shifting our weight back to the standing leg and grabbing behind the thigh here as we start to open up through those hips, rolling through that ankle, and maybe even extending that leg forwards or to the side. So finding our version of a single leg hold here, whatever feels good in our bodies. And making choices here with the arms as well, and maybe even rotating that leg forwards and to the side, feeling that femur moving in that hip socket. And no matter what this pose looks like, the expression that we're choosing with the leg that's extending out, we maintain that strong standing leg. Again, playing around with the opposite side here, making choices of what the shape of this leg will look like on this side. And this idea of playfulness within our foundation. Making a choice, feeling that femur just rotating in the hip socket. challenging ourselves to play around with what foundation really means. Coming back to the top edge of our mat, swooping the arms up overhead and bending those knees as we press the hands down towards our mat. And coming into our forward fold here, a little shake of the head, yes and no, releasing any tension through that neck. And extending one leg out and then the other to come all the way down to our mats in a seated position, adjusting as we need. Coming into our staff. Taking a moment to inhale and exhale as we bring one leg in for cradle the baby. Making different choices here. Maybe it feels better to cross the leg over the straight leg. Maybe we bend the knee. Maybe we allow ourselves to come down onto our back. So I'm just demonstrating different versions here. So finding whatever version that feels good for us and our bodies here. As we start to get some stretches into those deep hip rotators. Planting the hands down, feeling that chest nice and open. Finding that inhale and a soft exhale. And we can always adjust as well. So maybe we try it in one pose and then we realize something else would feel better and we go for that as well. Hopefully you don't have as many bugs flying around your head as I did while I was filming this. But if we do, how can we remain grounded? How can we remain present as we start to have these external factors starting to affect us? So coming back to that idea of foundation and strength and stability and security. And then switching legs if we haven't already done so. Finding the version on this side of what feels good in our body. It may be the same, it may be different. And when we're ready, we'll extend the legs on out. And again, just taking some gentle taps with our hands. Maybe we make fists, maybe we brush stuff off. But just bringing some awareness to those lower legs here. And that foundation for us when we are in our vertical position. And feeling our sit bones nice and grounded here. If we need to, we can always move the fleshy part of our body to the side. As we start to exhale, we allow ourselves to hinge forward at the hips, reaching towards our ankles. We can always have a nice bend of the knees as well if that just feels better for our lower back and through our hamstrings. Reaching those toes up towards the sky as we have a flexion of the ankle joint. And finding a long exhale as we allow ourselves to sink heavy over the legs. Taking our time here to allow the body to settle and release any tension that's been built up in those lower legs. Feeling that head heavy as we round through the spine, closing off the external world. And we start to shift some of that energy, maybe reaching a little bit more forward before we start to roll up, stacking one vertebra on top of the other. Feeling length through the top of that head and nice and heavy grounded quality through that pelvis, allowing our bodies to absorb the stretch that we just offered it. And taking our time here, rolling all the way down onto our backs. Feet are planted. Or maybe they reach out to the side. Maybe the knees come in towards one another as we wrap our arms across the body. But we're finding a position that we can be in for the next 5 minutes or so. So finding your version of Shavasana today. And in our Shavasana, we're just going to allow our body to absorb. Absorb the images that came up for us today. Absorb the movement patterns that our bodies shared with us today. Any sounds or smells or textures, anything that we experienced during our practice today. Just let the body take that in. As we're in our Shavasana here, feeling that breath. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. Feeling the belly rise and fall with no added effort, just an ease and a sense of safety, a sense of security, a sense of belonging where you are right here, right now. Knowing that in this moment you have everything that you need. Knowing that you can trust your body. Knowing that the next breath will come. Believing you have the skills and the capabilities to achieve what you want. Knowing you have the determination and the motivation and the conviction to put one foot in front of the other, to get closer to those actionable steps that we can take. Or maybe we need the reminder that we can take slower steps. We can take moments to just rest, to just be. Feeling our feet pressing into the earth, grass. Knowing that we are doing everything that we need to right here in this moment. Knowing we are safe. Knowing we are secure. And knowing we are grounded. Before we finish off our practice today, just take a moment to imagine a bright, warm, red light at the base of the spine that shines all the way down through the legs and through the feet, strong and powerful and mighty. And then when we're ready, we can start to roll the ankles, rolling the wrists, starting to bring movement back into the body as we transition back into our day. Or if you have an opportunity, by all means, stay in that Shavasana. Allow yourself to rest. But if you are ready, we'll meet together in an easy seated position in our Sukhasana. Adjusting as we need. Shoulder roll a little bit here. Bringing the arms up and over the head. Bringing them into our palms. Taking this opportunity to say thank you. And the light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. And I hope you can take what you did on your mat out into the world. So much gratitude and love. Thanks, everybody.